Good afternoon, everybody on my channel. Today is actually a few days before the end of 2021. By the time this video comes up, it should be in 2022, and I'm wishing all you future selves out there a happy new year. I hope Christmas has been nice for you if you do celebrate it. Otherwise, happy holidays to those of you that don't. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Mitas E-07 Plus dual sport tires that I have had on my Versys-X 300 for a couple of months now. It's distinct from the E-07 itself. The E-07 has been a very popular dual sport tire for adventure bikes for quite a while now, and E-07 Plus came out I think a bit after that. The difference between these two tires is that the E-07 Plus that I have on here has a rounder profile compared to the original E-07. Okay, it's meant to be more road focused on the side of heavy bikes like the GS, where you are not going to see a lot of off-road, or in general if you are planning to use your ADV bike more for the road than the actual off-road. The E-07, the original E-07, has a flatter profile so that when you're off-road, the center patch has a wider contact patch with the ground for you to grab hold of that loose terrain underneath you. The other thing that separates the E-07 and from the E-07 Plus is that E-07 Plus has larger individual blocks on the tire, so it gives you a bit more contact patch with even surfaces like the road itself. So the gaps between the blocks themselves are a bit smaller and a bit shallower, but they give you a bit more traction on the road, especially on wet tarmac. Now the one I have here is actually the standard E-07 Plus. E-07 Pluses come in a standard version and a Dakar Rally version. The Dakar Rally version is kind of denoted with a yellow band around the tire, so you know what you're getting when you are buying the tire. The Dakar version is actually made with a significantly harder material. It's got stiffer sidewalls, and for the most part it's a bitch and a pain to install or even repair out of a workshop with. But the Dakar Rally version is mostly made for actual hard enduro or rally riders that are expecting to meet flats along the way and require the ability to crawl on a flat tire as far as possible before actually having it serviced. Or to put it more simply, the real reason is that it has more tread life, because the material is harder and it will last a lot longer, especially on those longer trips. But for the vast majority of you out there, you're not going to need the Dakar Rally. The standard version will do, and in fact it's going to be a much better tire because it's got a better wet grip, considering that there's a lot more silica put into the material of the tire itself, as well as being slightly softer. Of course it's stiff, it's still stiff being a dual sport ADV tire, but it's slightly softer, giving you a bit more flex in the tire to actually grab onto loose surfaces, especially when you air down. Now for my E-07 Pluses, I generally run it at 32 psi front and back on my Versys-X 300, and on top of that, my Versys-X 300 has been converted to tubeless. So the tire itself is tubeless ready. For those of you that have something that probably uses tubeless wheels and rims, it's actually useful to have on those rims, because these tires fit that without requiring a tube. For those of us that have regular spoke tires that are not suited for tubeless tires, you can still consider doing a tubeless conversion for your rim and slap this on, allowing you to go with lower pressures and actually being able to just patch the tire by the roadside without taking out a tube and replacing it. So I'm going to go through the specifications, I mean the details of the tire with you very soon enough, but I'm going to pretty much say that I have used the tire for about 1,000 kilometers by now. From what I have seen with other people talking about the lifespan of the E07 Plus over a long period of time on the forums, most will give you a figure between 8,000 and 10,000 kilometers on average, which is actually not that bad. It's really good for a 50/50 tire for a ADV bike, you know, considering that ADVs are usually heavier and cause more wear and tear on the tires themselves. So considering that most of the reports by other people are on things like the GS, the what do you call that, the KTM 1290 Adventure and so on and so forth, those are very good numbers on par with a lot of other 50/50 tires using harder materials on their treads. Alright, so we'll get into the nitty-gritty and actually let you see what the tread pattern is like, and basically talk about the details of the Mitas E-07 Plus. Now, the front and the back are for the most part very similar in terms of their tread pattern and their material composition along the surface. Now, the E07 Plus is actually pretty soft for a 50/50 tire, despite the fact that it has a rather long shelf life on the road. Now, things like the TKC 80, where they have a very soft material component, tend to not last longer than 5,000 kilometers, but the E07 Plus, especially on the rear, they are able to get you 8,000 kilometers before they start really having bad wear characteristics on them at 8,000 kilometers. Is because unlike the TKC 80s, where they have slightly smaller individual blocks that are square in shape, the Mitas E07, they do have something very similar to the Heidenau K60's design, in that they tend to have a slightly larger block to spread out the heat. Now, as you know, the real reason why tires wear out very fast is really mostly because of the heat and less because of just the material alone. The heat on the Mitas E07 are larger than TKC 80s. They allow the tire to spread out the heat along each individual block a bit better and cool down a bit better as well, you know, reducing the overall heat buildup in your tires. This also gives you better performance on the road, as you're not always overheating the blocks themselves. That's why I would say, if you were somebody that is not exclusively using your bike off-road and generally would like to be able to still tour with it a bit, the Mitas E07 Pluses are a great choice on top of the Heidenau K60. The Heidenau K60s are actually a bit worse off-road than this because of the tread pattern, but they generally have something similar along the lines of having a single continuous strip to prevent overheating on the central part of your tire, where most of the time the tire is actually sitting on. Pardon my enunciation there. Now, the front of the Mitas E07 tends to track very well. You can see over there, it's actually from here, this angle, you can actually see how rounded the tire profile is. It's actually a very good tire to use on the road, I like the fact that compared to many dual sport 50/50 tires that I've used in the past, it actually leans over on the road very well, very easily, like a street tire, and it doesn't really have a lot of road noise compared to many tires that I've used before out there, especially if they are closer to the 50/50 range. On top of that, they do maintain a bit of flexibility when conforming to off-road surfaces. Now, when you put this on, even though it's easy to tell that it still maintains the ease of leaning over like a road tire, I do have to note that it actually does weigh a lot more than the stock tires, which is kind of expected. All 50/50 tires tend to be heavier than their street counterparts. It's a given. So it's kind of obvious when you start pushing it off the lot without using engine power, and it will definitely impact your fuel consumption there. But for the most part, I think it actually didn't really do as much to affect my fuel consumption on the Versys as compared to something like the Shinko 704s that I used to have on my DRZ. Those were pretty bad, even though it was more of an 80/20 tire than a true 50/50. Now, like I said, the front actually steers very well on the road, but off-road, the front itself actually tracks very well in the dirt. It's quite accurate when tracking in soft terrain. The rear has a bit of problem with its ability to maintain side-to-side grip, especially in very deep mud and wet tarmac or wet cement. I wouldn't say wet cement, but cement floors that are wet. Now, that's not really a huge problem most of the time off-road, because sometimes you just want to steer with the rear, but it does tend to be an issue on the road. But as long as you maintain safe road speeds, nothing above 120 kilometers an hour, turning on this should be pretty safe. I think even in the rain, it has quite good grip on the road itself. And of course, on regular dry days like this, the Mitas E-07 Pluses perform very, very well in providing grip on tarmac. Now, off-road, as you can see, most of my riding is going to be on something like this. They are mostly hard pack, very sharp stones, the occasional mud. Actually, I do encounter that. I've not really ridden on anything that's more muddy than maybe a 3-inch pit of that sort. The Mitas E-07 Plus actually does provide a good ability to tractor your way through it. I wouldn't say you are going to be able to confidently ride through 2-3 inch deep mud, wet mud, without slowing down or putting your feet down to pedal your way through. But with these tires on, you actually stand a chance of actually just putting your bike in second gear and slowly tractoring your way out of that pit you've put yourself in. And I kind of appreciate this ability on a few times that I've been to Tampines Quarry, where the mud can be quite deep in some sections, and most people there generally use actual dirt bikes, light dirt bikes with real dirt tires to traverse around. But this will actually be able to get you out of pinch if needed, but otherwise it mostly performs best on hard pack and rocky ground like this. So some features I probably want to mention before I go on with anything else is probably that the tires are really set up so that when you lean over, they are not very squirmy. As you can see, the side lugs on most of these, you know, the sides on the tire, these side lugs, they are always connected with one of the central lugs by a belt underneath. And I kind of like the fact that these tires have them compared to actual dirt tires, because they help to prevent your side lugs from squirming, basically flexing under load when you are leaned over. Not that I lean over a lot off-road, mind you, but on the road where you need the tire to be rigid so that you can actually maintain control in a turn, these are actually very good without actually affecting your bike's ability to dig into soft ground when you're off-road itself. Another nice thing that the Mitas E-07 Plus has on the side lugs is every alternate lug they do have a little recess here. The recess isn't very deep, and it doesn't have to be very deep because most of the time most people aren't going beyond the size of their tires on an ADV bike with a 50/50 tires. So the point of these recesses are pretty much the same as the sipes on most motorcycle tires. They are there to basically draw the wet road, you know, moisture away from the road when it's wet or it's raining, especially on the sides where it's most needed. Now the center doesn't really need that much because already you do have a lot of pressure pushing the water off the treads of the tire itself into the what do you call this, the pits here. And it's most definitely really needed when you're on your side. So these are always a welcome thing to have. I don't really see a lot of off-road 50/50 tires putting them on because they don't really expect many users to use them in rainy conditions on the road. But these are really good to have. The channels here at the side, they also do very well in making sure that if water is closer to the edge, it just flows down the side of your tire and away from your treads themselves. So these were all the features of the Mitas E-07 Plus. Of course, do remember this is the E-07 Plus, not the Mitas E-07. They're very different tires, but I still think the E-07 Plus is my preferred tire over the E-07 itself, because I generally tend to use it more to get from trailhead to trailhead using the roads itself. So the characteristic of the tire is something that I like more. Now, compared to other tires from other brands and manufacturers like the Heidenau K60 Scout and TKC 80s, two very popular tires on the ADV bike market, I would say those two tires are pretty much on the extreme ends of the 50/50 tire range. The TKC 80 being a tire that's very good off-road but not so good in the lifespan department, and of course on-road performance. The Heidenau K60 Scout being something that is very long-lasting with its central band and very good steering characteristics on the road, but being absolutely garbage on anything that has more than 1 inch of mud on it, and really only useful in very dry conditions on flat off-road surfaces. Now the Mitas E-07, E-07 Plus, I would say they are probably the best all-round 50/50 tire if you really only have one bike and want to do a variety of things on your ADV, and you can only have that one set of tires because you're not going to maybe switch wheel sets around all the time. So I think if you've only one bike, one wheel set, this is the best set of tires to have on hand at any one time. And yeah, If you do find this video informative, do remember to give me a like and subscribe down below, and I will see you next time. Peace out and bye bye.